It's week 16. That means fantasy football playoffs. You still want that huge upside at wide receiver. So who's got it? Let's go through all the games and figure out who you should start and sit. You should definitely be starting these guys. This is the must-start tier for week 16. Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Nico Collins, Puka Nacua, CeeDee Lamb, and Mike Evans. While you're getting your lineup set to pull out a playoff win in your fantasy, why not go for a win in Underdog if you're doing NFL pick'ems? Remember, if you're signing for the first time, you're new to Underdog, they'll give you a free pick. You can win right off the bat, and you get free cash. Just use code ENDGAME when you check out as a new customer and get up to $1,000 of bonus cash in your account. Just make sure to put that promo code ENDGAME. On Thursday night, we're going to have the Broncos taking on the Chargers. All right, let's start with clear number one receiver for Denver. It's Courtland Sutton.
I know he didn't come through with a big game last week and a good matchup, but he's still got 9 targets. He still scored a touchdown. He's got upside. I think Courtland Sutton still has to be a strong start.
Yeah, I really expected more, especially against a not too intimidating Colts defense. This should be a tougher matchup, but I don't really think it matters. In fact, should be a better game for Sutton. Let's still put him in the strong tier. And if there was one positive for the Chargers last week, it's that Ladd McConkey played, and he actually scored a touchdown. But now, this Denver defense we know has been tough against receivers most of the season. How do you feel about him?
I don't feel too bad about him for a couple of reasons. Number one, Pat Surtain with an ankle injury, not sure if he's even going to play on a short week here. But also, number two, he's probably not going to be covering Ladd McConkey too much. He primarily runs out of the slot. I don't think Ladd McConkey is the strongest of the strong starts this week, but I still think he's a low-end strong start.
I'm going to move him to the solid tier, mainly because even though he looked healthy, I don't know if Justin Herbert is. I mean, he's been limping around, and this offense has looked fairly anemic. So I do know that Denver's defense has given up a lot more yardage over the last few games than they had previously. It's still a pretty tough spot here, so I think he's a very solid start. And then Quentin Johnston is still somewhat in the mix here, but again, it's fantasy playoff time. Could you flex QJ?
Oh, if you're desperate. I mean, he's coming off a pretty nice game, actually, last week and got 10 targets, surprisingly. But, I mean, this is very risky with your fantasy season on the line. Risky flex.
Very risky. I mean, he's always a boom-bust type of player. But, again, this Denver defense doesn't really inspire me. So, I'd like to do better if possible, but you could flex him if you need to. And then the first of 2 Saturday games is going to be the Texans at the Chiefs. All right, so it's been pretty much all Nico Collins in this offense. Where does that leave Tank Dell?
Hey, he got 2 catches last week. That's an improvement. You can't start Tank Dell.
Leave him on your bench. Better yet, leave him on waivers. You could have cut him weeks ago and you wouldn't have noticed the difference. Now, Kansas City is going to be a tricky one because we still don't know if Pat Mahomes is even going to play. A high ankle sprain week to week, not promising, and a little bit of a short week. So, with that said, it's a revenge game for DeAndre Hopkins, sort of, against the Texans, but how good can you feel?
You can't feel good, especially if it's not Patrick Mahomes. If it's Carson Wentz, there is no way I could start really any of these pass catchers, to be honest. But if Patrick Mahomes does play, it is a good matchup here, although I know they did a good job against Tyreek Hill. But I'll say DeAndre Hopkins a flex start, only if it's Mahomes.
Let's make it easy and say if it's not Mahomes, I'm just going to sit all Chiefs receivers. Even if it is Mahomes, just a flex. Hopkins has not been as involved. Even if for the last couple of weeks, it seems like his target share has gone down. And that's partly because last week it was Xavier Worthy who was the number one target in this offense. But with that said, even if it's Mahomes, could you start him?
Yeah, I think if it's Mahomes, you got to feel pretty good. I'm still only going to say a flex, but I'm going to say a very good flex with a lot of upside.
I'll say a risky flex still because he's always kind of risky, but again, only if Mahomes plays. And then, look, let's talk about Hollywood Brown because word is he might return for Week 16. By return, I mean actually play in a Chiefs uniform. But even if he does play and Mahomes plays, is this a consideration?
No, coming back from injury, first game of the season, you know he's going to be very limited. I don't care if, Peyton Manning in his prime was playing, not starting Hollywood Brown.
Yeah, that's pretty aggressive, but I think you're on the spot here. I mean, even if Hollywood plays, how much he's going to play, no thanks. Now, hopefully this video helps you with all your start-sit decisions, but if you still have questions for start-sit, waiver wire trades, or anything fantasy football related, use the Draft Lane app because that connects you directly with Chris and myself for all your fantasy football needs. Download it for free right now. Now, also on Saturday, it's going to be a pretty tough matchup between the Steelers and the Ravens. George Pickens has not played for a couple of weeks and not sure what his status is going to be yet for Week 16. If he gives it a go, are you going to trust him?
I think you have to. He's got so much upside. It's the Ravens. There is risk because he is coming off a hamstring injury, but it's risk I'm willing to take. He's a strong start.
Oh man, I think I'm much lower this week on him because even if he's just completely good to go, this Ravens secondary has gotten much better over the last few weeks. In fact, they're top 5 in terms of limiting fantasy points to wide receivers. I know schedule plays part in that, but before Malik Neighbors scored this past week, they had gone 3 straight games without allowing a receiver to score, and that includes when they played Pittsburgh just a couple weeks ago. So I'm going to say he's just a flex. I mean, if you're a playoff-bound team and you have good receivers, I'm okay sitting Pickens. Always risky trying to guess who's going to score for the Ravens. Well, last week it was pretty much everyone but Zay Flowers. Although Zay Flowers did still get the most targets, so what do you do with him?
He's been so underwhelming for weeks now. I mean, he's not killing you, but he's just, the upside is gone. What has happened to the upside here? Zay Flowers, just a flex.
Yeah, it's really puzzling. I'm not sure what's going on here, but he always has upside. He always has disappointment potential, so just put him in the flex tier as well. And just when I thought we could forget about Rashad Bateman, he scores 2 touchdowns in Week 15, but again, that was the Giants. Can he do anything against the Steelers?
He could always do something like that, hit a long play, hit a home run, but you're really risking it here. I would prefer not to play Rashad Bateman this week.
Well, I'll say because he could always score a touchdown. That was my criticism of him, is he's kind of touchdown or bust. So, well, yeah, if he's going to score 2 touchdowns, you want to play him, but very risky flex. The Giants are going to take on the Falcons in Atlanta this week. Another team where we have no idea what the quarterback situation is. Is it Tommy DeVito, Drew Lock, or more Tim Boyle? So, where do we put Malik Neighbors?
Well, I think if you got Malik Neighbors, you're actually hoping for Tim Boyle. I mean, Malik Neighbors was doing nothing in that first half, and then Tim Boyle comes in and just starts slinging it all over the field, and we see Malik Neighbors with some actual upside. And he gets a great matchup this week against the Falcons. I know the Raiders wide receivers didn't really do much against the Falcons, but that was Desmond Ridder. So I think Malik Neighbors, I can't put him in the strong start tier, but I think in this matchup, he's a very solid start.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm kind of hoping for Tim Boyle because you know what? He'll throw it up for grabs and Malik Neighbors will come down with them. You know, with DeVito and Locke, these guys aren't throwing it more than 5 yards down the field. So just let Boyle sling it. What do you have to lose besides more games? But at least we can put Neighbors in the solid tier. Can't go much higher because it's still the Giants, but it's a great matchup. Then in Atlanta, don't look now, Drake London scored a touchdown last week. All right, can he do it again against the G-Men?
I mean, maybe he could. They just gave up 5 touchdowns to Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, but I think that's still very risky to expect a touchdown. But at the same time, Drake London has been so good this year. I mean, for the most part, he's been good. I don't see any reason why he's not going to be good against the Giants. I don't think I can put Drake London in the strong tier because I just don't think he has like the upside that some of those other guys have. But I think he's very, very solid.
I'm going to put him tentatively in the strong tier because it feels like even though the touchdown drought was prolonged, he was getting so many targets, it just kind of switched this last week. But yeah, based on the way the Giants look, I'm pretty much firing up Drake London in most leagues. Now, Darnell Mooney, on the other hand, not the best game on Monday night, but can he bounce back here?
He could. I mean, he's been good most of the year. We got to give people a pass sometimes when they have down games. So I'm not going to say Darnell Mooney a strong start or anything, but a very good flex start.
I got London as a strong start. I'll put Mooney in the solid tier. Again, I feel like at home, Atlanta, Kirk Cousins looking not as horrible. I think that they can get by. The Patriots at the Bills this week. Well, if there's a receiver worth talking about in New England, I think it's just still Demario Douglas, and it's pretty much still the same for Demario Douglas. Just a very unexciting flex.
Yeah, I mean, he did catch that touchdown, but that was really a broken play. Great play by Drake May. I mean, what's the upside here? No chance. No, not even a flex. I'm avoiding him.
Now in Buffalo, it's odd because they are scoring tons of points, and yet you still don't know how to feel about any of their skilled players, especially receiver, except for maybe Khalil Shakir. Clearly the number 1 receiver there. He's been cooking lately. Does he keep it going?
Against the Patriots, why not? Again, I'm not going to say a strong start, but I think he's a solid start.
Agreed. This matchup really shouldn't scare you. Christian Gonzalez is there, but he's not really going to get Shakir too much as the slot receiver. I think he's still very solid. One guy who did not cook last week and might have cooked you if you started Amari Cooper. Yeah, it looks like week 14 was just an outlier. Do you think there's a chance he does something in week 16?
I mean, there's always a chance that anybody who's on the field at any time could do something, but yeah, I'm not taking that chance with Amari Cooper.
This is why we've been very wary of starting him, because the floor is basically rock bottom 0. So you don't want to risk that in your fantasy playoffs. Let's just pass on Cooper. And then Keon Coleman did come back and play, although you might not notice it from the box score. Would you play Coleman?
No, definitely not starting Keon Coleman.
No, absolutely not. Next, we have Cardinals versus the Panthers. Marvin Harrison Jr. Oh, man. You really think that we should be able to trust Marvin Harrison Jr., the top receiver in the draft by this point, but we can't. Could you start him?
No, I don't even care. It's the Cardinals. If he goes off, fine. He goes off on my bench. I'm tired of this. You really want to deal with this again? No, risky flex.
I mean, at least has to be in the flex tier, but man, he's one I just would rather not see in my lineup. So much disappointment here, so only flex if you really can't do better. Now for Carolina, Adam Thielen, well, kind of a disappointment last week as well. He still caught a few passes, but do you think there's enough upside here?
Yeah, I think the upside might be gone. Jalen Coker only had one less target last week. Not the Adam Thielen show anymore. I still think he's okay, though. Probably a very high-end flex.
Look, if you're in a full PPR league, he does get you the floor. He does still have potential to score, but yeah, he's not a guy who's going to carry your team to victory single-handedly, let's say that. Now, you did mention Jalen Coker, 110 yards and a touchdown, although that pretty much all came on one play. Do you think he's more than a flex?
No, I wouldn't even be able to flex him, honestly. Yeah, 83-yard touchdown. I mean, what did he do outside of that? Very little. I'm not starting Jalen Coker.
Well, I'll consider him a very risky boom bust flex. In a deeper league, sure, take a shot on him. Now let's talk Lions at Bears. Amon-Ra St. Brown showed why you don't bench him. Yeah, keep him in your lineups. Now, Jameson Williams also scored a touchdown, but didn't do a whole lot else besides that. Do you trust him against the Bears?
Can't feel good against this Bears defense. I mean, he's always got upside, but he's always got risk. Risky flex.
Yeah, I'll just have to throw in the risky flex. On the one hand, not having Monty might mean they have to pass more, but on the other side, it's not a good matchup, so flex with touchdown upside. And then just when you thought you could trust Bears receivers, man, these last 2 games since Thomas Brown became the head coach, the offense has dried up. So, what do you do with DJ Moore?
I feel pretty good about DJ Moore. It's the Lions. Remember the last time these teams played, he had a nice game against them. Lions defense very banged up right now. I'm going to say DJ Moore a very solid start.
Well, the targets are still there. He definitely has upside still. I think solid is fine. I just can't feel great about any of these individual receivers. And, you know, Keenan Allen, I don't pretty much feel the same. I'm just going to call him a solid start as well. Is that how you feel?
Exactly. Remember, Detroit not very good against the slot. He torched them last time.
And then Rome Odunze, same tier?
No, you can't feel as good about Odunze. Risky flex.
Right, he's the guy who seems to have fallen off a bit the last couple of weeks while the veterans have emerged. So if Keenan's fully healthy, which he is, then just a flex. Titans at the Colts. Again, we don't know who the quarterback is for Tennessee because they benched Will Levis, understandably, after 3 picks. Is it going to be Rudolph? Is it going to be Levis? Or does it matter? Are you just done with Calvin Ridley?
Yeah, I'm done with Calvin Ridley. I mean, you want to flex him, fine, but just understand the risk.
You know, I'd like to say if it's Mason Rudolph, we have some hope here based on what we saw before. But risky all around flex. Are you also done with Nick Westbrook-Akine and hoping that the touchdowns come back?
Yeah, I mean, you really want to put a guy in your lineup, you're just praying scores? No way.
No, I'm done here. I think his run is over. Tempting to just ignore the Colts receivers after the way AR's looked the last couple of games, but is there still hope for Michael Pittman?
This is a tough matchup against the Titans. I know the secondary's banged up, but tough matchup. AR, tough quarterback matchup for Pittman. I mean, he has a floor, but that's about it. I'm not going to start Pittman.
I mean, he somehow managed double-digit PPR points, but again, where's the ceiling? Like you said, you need a little bit more here. I think he's just a flex as well. Josh Downs, feel any better or worse about him than Pittman?
Nah, I can't feel better about Josh Downs with Anthony Richardson not starting him.
Agree. Let's just sit Downs. Now we got the Rams at the Jets. This one's interesting. Okay, so Puka has clearly asserted himself as a top target and a must start. What happened to Cooper Kupp?
I don't know. He disappeared last week, but that was the 49ers. That was weather. This is the Jets, and I know the Jets have a good defense, but they haven't been quite as good, and they just get torched by Brian Thomas Jr. and to a lesser extent Brenton Strange. I'm still going to say Cooper Kupp a strong start. Maybe not my favorite strong start, but still a strong start.
Well, I think it would be a huge overreaction to bench Cooper Kupp, but at the same time, the target share, there's a big discrepancy now between Kupp and Nacua. Not an ideal matchup, so I'm just going to put him in the solid tier. And there seems to be a growing discrepancy between the target share for the Jets receivers, and Garrett Wilson not too happy about it. So, with that said, can Garrett Wilson be in your fantasy lineup in Week 16?
Yeah, I think you still are starting Garrett Wilson, but I mean, you got to be pretty annoyed about what's going on with the Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams nonsense in New York. But that being said, Garrett Wilson still did score. He still, has potential. He's a solid start.
The talent doesn't seem to be being put to full use, but, this matchup is pretty good for him. He still has some upside. I think he is a solid start for me this week. And look, you didn't love it, but you thought Devontae Adams could go off last week. He definitely did. Is it going to just continue this way?
It probably will. Why not? Rams defense doesn't scare me off of Devontae Adams. Aaron Rodgers is just going to keep throwing it to this guy for as long as they're both Jets, which will probably be for a few more games. He's a strong start.
Yeah, like if the target share is this insanely high, which it probably will continue to be, you pretty much have to start him. I'll say he has to be a strong start. This matchup is a pretty good one. And I'll tell you what, you should probably take the higher on underdog. If you look at those pick'ems right now, Devontae Adams only at 72 yards. He's gone way over that the last 2 weeks, well over 100 yards. And he's gone at least 72 yards in 3 of the last 4 games. So right now, 72.5 yards. Devontae Adams, take the higher if you do NFL picks on underdog. If you haven't tried those NFL pick'ems, do it now. Sign up on underdog. Use code ENDGAME. You get the free pick and up to $1,000 of bonus cash on your initial deposit. Now the Eagles at the Commanders should be a good one. So A.J. Brown, okay, maybe not back to the must-start tier, but sure enough, the squeaky wheel got greased. Is it going to do it again?
I'm not sure, but at this point, you can't really bench A.J. Brown, right? This is what I was saying all last week. Like, I don't want to have A.J. Brown on my bench and see those fantasy points. Commanders, yeah, they've been better against the pass, but they're not elite. I think he's a strong start.
Again, this is one of those players that you pretty much just trust the big play potential, the upside here. They're probably not going to force it to him, and it's definitely a tougher matchup, but still, A.J. Brown, I think, has to be a strong start. How does that go for Devontae Smith, who also came away with a big game last week?
Yeah, he did come away with a huge game, but at the same time, look what he had done the weeks prior. I don't feel nearly as good about Smith in this matchup, but at the same time, I'm going to say, not like a flex. I think he's a solid start.
Well, at least he's back in the circle of trust. You don't have to feel terrified of putting him in your lineup. You never know what you're going to get with Devontae Smith, and it's not an ideal matchup, but I think solid is fair. And if there's a guy who isn't an absolute no-brainer but is pretty close, it's probably Terry McLaurin. I mean, it is the Eagles' defense. Does that worry you?
It worries me a little, but not enough not to start him. He's got to be a strong start.
Well, I know it's going to worry some people that the last time these teams met, he had 1 catch for 10 yards. I think he'll do better. He's been on fire lately, so I'm just going to trust the talent here and keep him in the strong tier. Now, this week, the Browns are going to take on the Bengals in Cincinnati. Not a broken record. Once again, we don't know who the starting quarterback is going to be this time for Cleveland. I really hope it's Jameis Winston for fantasy purposes. I really wanted to put Jerry Jeudy as a must-start based on the way he's been performing, but if it's DTR, I don't know if I could do it. What do you think?
Yeah, this is tough. We don't know who it is yet. Kevin Stefanski said he's going to wait a couple days to make a decision. Let's hope for fantasy it's Jameis Winston. If it's Jameis Winston, you pretty much have to start Jerry Jeudy. If it's DTR, I'm going to say only a solid start.
Right, even if it is Thompson Robinson, I mean, he was looking Judy's way. To some extent, maybe Njoku Tillman's availability will affect this, but just the way Jerry Jeudy has been playing lately, I find it really hard to get him out of my lineup no matter who the quarterback is. And again, this Bengals defense, still not good, despite how good Will Levis made them look. Speaking of Cedric Tillman, he's been out a while, but if he makes a comeback and it's Jameis Winston, would you play him?
If it's Jameis Winston, yeah, I think you could flex him because it is the Bengals, like you said, a great matchup.
Yeah, this could be one of those kind of sneaky starts, but we need to know that he's clear way before the weekend, so risky, but a flex with some upside. And I'll just say with Elijah Moore, I think the upside is gone. I don't think it matters anymore, the matchup or the quarterback. I'm done with him.
Yeah, done. Hard pass.
And on the other hand, for the Bengals, Jamar Chase could help your team to a championship. T. Higgins had a nice game last week, but a little hard to predict. Does he have another big game against Cleveland?
Why not? I mean, okay, he had that one down game a couple weeks ago. He's been mostly great, and it's Cleveland, not scaring me at all. Yeah, T. Higgins, borderline must start. Strong start.
The way Joe Burrow's been playing, I think T. Higgins is a very strong start. Now let's talk Vikings at Seahawks. All right, I know y'all have a lot of good players in your roster. If you have JJ, just don't think about it. You start him. What about Jordan Addison, who, let's face it, has been just as involved, if not more, than Justin Jefferson on a weekly basis lately?
Hey, you got to feel good about Addison. I mean, he's got the weekly upside. No, he's not going to go off every week, but he's got that potential. I can't say strong start, but I'll say very solid start.
Yeah, and certain matchups are more favorable for him. The Seahawks have been much better against receivers the last few weeks, and I really don't know if this will be a high-scoring game, but I think he's at least in the solid tier. And part of the reason I say that is because, well, the Seahawks receivers might be catching passes from Sam Howell, or trying to. So, with that said, what does that mean for Jackson Smith and Jigba?
Yeah, this could be a big blow for JSN if it is Sam Howell. Not sure yet. Let's hope it's not. I'm going to just say solid right now and hope it's Geno.
Yeah, if Geno Smith is good, and we know this, then I think JSN could still be solid because he gives you a floor. And if it's Howell, I think he's just a flex. And as far as DK Metcalf goes, we're still looking for that big game. Where is it?
Who knows? Are we going to see it? Didn't even help that he was healthy. I don't care who's the quarterback. DK Metcalf, risky flex.
Agree. Even though it should be a good matchup against this Vikings secondary, very risky no matter who the quarterback is. So just a flex option. Jaguars taking on the Raiders in Week 16. All right, well, there's one bright spot for the Jags. It's Brian Thomas Jr. I mean, even with a backup quarterback, he's just on a roll. Is there any way you don't start him?
No way. You have to get him in your lineup. Against the Raiders, he's got to be a strong start.
He's getting touchdowns. He's getting deep shots. Yeah, you got BTJ, just start him. Then on the flip side, Jacoby Myers. Look, I was worried about Desmond Ridder being the quarterback for the Raiders. I didn't think it would be this bad, although maybe I kind of did. But what if Aidan O'Connell returns?
I mean, if Aidan O'Connell returns, you got to feel pretty good. It is the Jaguars. I know it's going to be hard to put him in your lineup after what he just did, but let's think about what he was doing before that. So if it's Aidan O'Connell, solid start. If it's Desmond Ridder, no way.
If it's Ridder again, no chance. But I will say he's a very solid start. The Jaguars defense still not very good against the pass. Aidan O'Connell at least will air it out. So let's just hope it's O'Connell, and then you can start Myers. Now we have the 49ers and the Dolphins, probably the most two disappointing offenses from Week 15. Let's see who gets right, if any. Can Juwan Jennings bounce back?
I think he can. He's still got 9 targets in that game. He's been mostly good. If you take out the Brandon Allen game and the bad weather games, he's been really good. Dolphins are tough against wide receivers, no doubt about it. So I'll say Jennings, assuming the weather's good like it usually is in Miami, a solid start.
Right. Don't feel like there's a big game in store because, like I said, Dolphins don't give up a lot, especially not big plays to opposing wide receivers. Even though Nico Collins did score twice last week, very limited yardage. But he could at least be a solid option. And I'll make this one easy. Deebo Samuel, no chance.
No, not doing this anymore. No way.
All right, now the real trick will be figuring out what do you do with Tyreek Hill? Probably one of the biggest disappointments from last week. And that's the 49ers.
Yeah, I thought he was going to boom against Houston, and instead he completely busted. Oh, man, one of the biggest busts of the year. I'm starting to wonder if Tyreek Hill is getting a little dusty, to be honest with you. Man, just not looking very good out there. 49ers, still a tough secondary. I'm only going to say a solid start.
Yeah, it's hard to just outright bench Tyreek Hill, although nothing in this defensive matchup points to a big game. And it pointed to one last week, and he still didn't come through. So they're at home. They still technically could make the wild card. They should be fighting hard, but I think he's just a solid option. And probably the bigger disappointment was actually Jalen Waddle, although he left early because of an injury, and we're not sure his status, even if he suits up. Would you give him a chance?
No chance. Been mostly a bust this year. Gave you a 0 last week. If you're even alive with Jalen Waddle still, please don't start him.
Right, that's a good point. I mean, surely you have somebody else you could play instead. So let's just say a big no to Waddle. Then the Bucs at the Cowboys. You got 2 stud receivers on either side with Evans and Lamb. You start them. Do you also now consider Jalen McMillan? Even with Evans going off last week, McMillan had a pretty nice game, including another touchdown.
I think you have to consider him. I mean, this is 3 touchdowns in 2 games, and this is the Cowboys secondary. He's risky, but he's got upside, so a flex with upside.
Yeah, I'm tempted to put him a little bit higher, but again, we don't want to get carried away. You know, Trevon Diggs is out for the season. The Cowboys defense still very vulnerable, but let's just say he's a flex with a pretty nice ceiling. And then on Monday night, we're going to have the Saints at the Packers. I'm pretty sure we know it's going to be Spencer Rattler at quarterback, and I'm pretty sure the only Saints receiver I can even name at this point is still MVS. Could you consider Marquez Valdez-Scantling?
With my fantasy season on the line and Spencer Rattler under center, no chance.
No, I don't think so. Now, as far as the Packers, here we go. Let's spin the wheel. Are you trusting Christian Watson?
I will say Christian Watson at least has, made some big plays, so he's got upside, and it is the Saints, so I'll say a flex with upside.
Yeah, and looking at the matchup and in terms of the coverage matrix, Fantasy Points puts out all that great data. It points to Watson having a really good matchup potential advantage. I still can't say anything more than risky flex because he's a Packer receiver. But what about Romeo Doubs? Scored not once but twice last week.
Yeah, he pulled the Jaden Reed 3-catch, 2-touchdown game. We're going to chase that here? Risky flex.
A deep league flex option. I mean, we know he always could score a touchdown, and if he doesn't, then he does nothing. And then you save the best for last here. Here's your chance. Jaden Reed.
Well, he didn't get you a 0 last week, but he didn't really help you win either. I'm not doing it.
No, let's just pass. Those are all the wide receivers you need to know about in fantasy. You need to know about running back, quarterback, tight end, and everything else. Check out the playlist for Week 16.